Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the British GT Esports Championship. We've done the Americas, we've done the Asia region, and we've done the World Championships. And now it is time for the British GT Championship. My name is Paul Jeffrey, and I am delighted to be joined in the virtual commentary box today by the voice of GT racing himself, Mr. David Addison. Hello, sir.
Paul, everybody, good evening. Welcome to something new for British GT, our first esports championship with a mega entry, not only of real-world drivers in GT3, but the sim racing stars as well that have qualified through the hot laps in GT4. First time, Paul, we've talked about an SRO esports championship like this with two separate classes, not just real and sim drivers, but GT3 cars and GT4. And we start, as we would have done, COVID-19 not accepted, in the real world at Oulton Park, which is always a circuit that delivers bags of action. Traffic around here, I think, is going to be the real story of the night.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating, David, to see GT4 and GT3 combined, as you say, for the very first time, which is another new aspect that our drivers are going to have to find their way through to the best effect. And what really interests me, I think, David, is to see how these GT3 cars, powered, as you say, by real-world drivers, get on against their arguably more experienced and virtual world counterparts in the GT4s. At Oulton Park, where passing is a premium, this is going to be very interesting.
There aren't many championships either that can boast the quality of driver that we have within GT4, in other words, the Hot Laps SimStar qualifiers. Plus, we've got British GT4 champions, we've got British GT3 champions, and we've got a Formula One world champion on the grid, because Jenson Button is sixth on the grid going into this first race. So it's a stellar entry at a circuit that always delivers drama for GT cars. Oulton Park is not the widest of circuits, and over the years GT cars have got wider, haven't we all? But Oulton Park is a place where you've got to be brave, you've got to be bold, and it is a pretty unforgiving circuit. So those that come out on top tonight in both classes will have really earned their rewards, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I cannot wait to see how it goes on. It's great that the SRO Esports Series has expanded into the Intelligent Money British GT Championship as well. Obviously, this is a championship that you know a great deal about from the real world, David, from your exploits behind the microphone. Is there any drivers from the real world that you're particularly looking forward to see how they get on in a virtual space?
Pretty much everybody, actually. I mean, the obvious one, and I'm not being flippant when I say that, but the obvious one really is for this evening, James Baldwin. You know, he did real world racing, ran out of money, went sim racing, became world's fastest gamer, then came back into real world racing. And last year, when he made his British GT debut at Oulton Park, by dint of being the world's fastest gamer, winning his seat within the Team Rocket RJN McLaren, he won the race with Michael O'Brien, who lines up behind him on the grid. So you've got to say that James Baldwin, in theory, ought to be the shoe-in here, but he's been out-qualified. Now, Angus Fender is somebody that was very impressive in qualifying, at least, in some of our SRO Esports European events, the European Championship that we had last year. And he has qualified on pole position, so he is definitely a man to watch. But this is the GT3 entry. You've got Tom Canning, who was the GT4 champion in 2019. Ben Green, very, very talented young driver. Andrew Howard, double GT3 champion. Sam Neary, another young gun. Angus Fender, we've touched on. Jenson Button, no introduction needed. Hasn't raced at Oulton Park for 20 years or so, but he's sixth on the grid. James Baldwin, world's fastest gamer. Adam Morgan, very, very rapid touring car racer, of course. Sicily Motorsport will run a GT4 program, and Adam is making his eSports GT3 debut. Jamie Stanley missing, sadly, but Gus Burton, very impressive in Ginetta racing over the last couple of seasons. So that's a snapshot of the GT3 entry, and that's quality in itself. Then you've got Andrew Watson, who has done great things both in Ginetta racing in the UK and across the world for Garage 59. Matt Cowley, sadly not with us. But he's another driver that's proved himself in GT cars and single-seaters. Jack Lemmer, whose father, Mark, very successful racer himself, has operated Barwell Motorsport for decades to many a title. Jack's one to watch. Ron Ratcliffe, GT4 champion. Bobby Trundley representing Team Brit. Sandy Mitchell, the reigning British GT champion. Jody Fannin, another very, very rapid and very experienced driver. You don't rule out Jody, who is the 2012 GT4 champion. Morgan Short, racer, comes from a good pedigree. His father, Martin, mainstay of British GT through the early 2000s. Michael O'Brien, race winner in GT4, in GT3 and in historics. And Johnny Adam, 16 race wins, and 4 times a British GT champion. Now, that's an entry list and a half, I reckon. And these, Paul, are the hot laps qualifiers in the GT4 cars.
Yep, so another great entry list from our sim racing stars. As you can see on the list, these drivers have taken hot lap qualification for this opening round, so they've earned their place on the grid, representing each manufacturer in the GT4 class. Chris Hocker in the Audi R8 LMS GT4, big name from the world of Assetto Corsa Competizione. Andrea Copaccia in the Yashi Aston Martin, again another driver very much at the forefront of many esport activations. Maxime Batifulier in the Ginetta G55, a car that I'm fascinated to see how the Ginetta gets on here at Oulton Park. Charlie Crossland, another driver that we've seen at the forefront of many of these GT, normally in GT3 specification, debuting in the Aston Martin this weekend. Manuel Rodriguez for Team Redline in the KTM. Mortis Lorna, who's a Formula 1 Esport Williams driver in the McLaren 570S GT4. Arthur Camara for BMW, Jack McIntyre for Zancho Rocket Sim Sport in the Porsche, Igor Ogrodnikov for Lada Sport Rosneft in the KTM, and Alexandre Hebrigno in the Mercedes AMG. All very, very talented names. Samir Ibrahim, that was a front runner in the SRO Esports Championship last season. So again, a name that we have seen at the forefront of various championships. William Tregurtha, another rocket driver, this time in the beautiful, big and bold Chevrolet, a fabulous addition to the GT4 grid. Michael Kondaxioglu for Sidemax Motorworks in the Alpine A10. Nils Naujoks, a mainstay of sim racing esports drivers, very much one of the biggest names in virtual motorsport. Florian Hasser, another driver many will recognise from his exploits in the Audi R8 in the GT World Series. Ivan Shermatinsky as well for Jean Alesi Esports Academy. Jean Alesi, big name in the world of Formula 1. Luca Burke racing in the Porsche 718 Cayman. Chris McDade for Chevrolet. Eamon Murthy in the Ginetta, and Maciej Malinowski for the Hunkfot Racing Alpine A110. That, Mr. David Addison, is a whole bunch of very talented virtual racers.
This is going to be good, isn't it? Can't wait. And it is the first of 5 races within the championship, because after Oulton Park there will be Snetterton. We also have races at Silverstone and Brands Hatch, and we finish at Donington, as we would and frequently do. We do this year as well within the Real World Championship. Quick word about how this is all going to work. It's a 60-minute race. Qualifying is done, as you've gathered. So qualifying is done, then the drivers will have some time for a quick glug of water and rejoin the server. So we have a 60-minute race. GT3 drivers, the real world drivers, can enter as normal. GT4, you have to qualify each time through the hot laps. The fastest 2 qualifiers of each brand are accepted. The top 10 GT4 drivers go through into the next race. The other 10 positions in the entry for round 2 will have to be fought out by hot laps. 15 minutes for qualifying. We've done that. The race has a mandatory pit stop where you have to add a minimum of 1 litre of fuel, and you can change tyres if you so desire. So we'll try and keep an eye to who is doing what in that respect. And that pit window, just like the Intelligent Money British GT Championship, the Real World Series, is between 25 and 35 minutes. Points are awarded to the top 10 in each class. Ballast you will carry, not here, obviously, but for the subsequent races, it goes to the top 3 from the previous round. It's not cumulative, but 30, 15 and 10 kilos will be lugged around by the GT3 and GT4 top 3 for the next round of the championship. It's about as realistic as it can be, I tell you. And we're starting at Oulton Park, which is a mega circuit. The British GT Championship that was created by the British Racing Drivers Club owes its roots to what was the National Sports GT Challenge initially, that dates back to 1993. It began at Donington Park. It was an all Porsche affair. SRO took it over for 2004 onwards, and boy, how it has moved on. We've had some amazing racing, and I don't think anybody would have predicted, even a few years ago, that here we would be with a fully blown SRO Blessed Esports Championship, and with the entry that we have got. Asking you, Paul, to pick a winner in either class, I suspect, is rather unfair, but you've got to say, in both GT3 and GT4, it is no exaggeration to say it's wide open, is it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were speaking off air, David, before we came onto the broadcast about how we're intrigued to see For the GT3 side of things, how much practice and time and energy the drivers have put in and how close that field is going to be. The GT4s, the real sim racing esport pros, you'd expect them to be separated by nigh on nothing between them, which they are after quali. But what's impressed me is the times of the GT3 drivers. I honestly think, based on qualification at least, anybody in the top 15 has got a very reasonable opportunity to cross that finish line first. So for me, the next 60 minutes and the strategic element also of making a mandatory pit stop is going to be fascinating to see who manages that one, who keeps the car on track, and critically, who manages traffic as well, because I don't think I'm being unfair saying this, David, but I think towards the bottom of the GT3 drivers, they will not be a million miles in front of the top of the GT4s. So there's not that much of a differential between the two classes in terms of ultimate speed and pace.
I think you're absolutely right, and that is part of this factor of the traffic, isn't it? And the same is true of pit stops. You know, do you pit early to get out of traffic? The risk being that when you rejoin, you're in different traffic. And the point again around here at Oulton Park, it ain't that wide. It's not like Silverstone where there's a huge amount of width of the road to get through traffic. You might very well get yourself stuck. So that is going to be all part and parcel of it. And I also fear that you might get the odd incident, just as we have in the real world, because of the narrowness of the circuit. It's all going to get a bit congested, and that's going to have to pan out as well. We also understand that the front engine cars are expected to have a slight advantage as we have a look down on the grid. Angus Fender starting on pole position, James Baldwin alongside him. There you've got the green Mercedes of Sam Neary and Michael O'Brien's McLaren lining up alongside. Ben Green's BMW on the third row, Jenson Button in the Sky-backed McLaren from Team Rocket RJN, sixth on the grid. Seventh is Sandy Mitchell, reigning champion, with Rob Collard and Gus Burton. He's lining up alongside him there further back on the grid. JD Fannin on the next row. You've got Bobby Trundley as well as the grid starts to build. There is Gus Burton. There is Bobby Trundley. So the order has shuffled slightly from what we were anticipating after the hot laps. There is Tom Canning, and alongside him should be Andrew Watson. Yes, it is. Then you've got Adam Morgan in the Mercedes, and Morgan Short in that retro Roll Centre livery next on the grid. There is Johnny Adam, Jack Lemmer for company, and it is Ryan Ratcliffe that rounds out the GT3 element of the grid. And then we have a scroll through GT4. Luca Burke, Paul, having headed the times.
Yep, fabulous job from Luca Burke. Great to see him actually returning to form a little bit this season with the Porsche. Number 87 on pole position. In second place, McIntyre in the 37. So it's a Porsche front row with a McLaren second row of the grid. So Porsche and McLaren both looking very, very fast at this stage. Malinowski in the Alpine, number 92 that you see on the left of your screen, is alongside Samir Ibrahimi for Audi. So Samir Ibrahimi a little bit further down the running order than I think maybe he would have anticipated at this stage in the grid. And all of these cars, all of these drivers, of course, just to remind everybody at home, have set their time through a hot lap qualification competition. So they're well versed with the car that they're driving and the circuit on which they're driving on. They only had 15 minutes in qualification, but David, I'm sure you'll agree with me, is the same in real and virtual space. Qualification's important, of course it is. Having a good track position is always beneficial to your race opportunities, but in a 1 hour race such as this, where traffic is going to be coming into play for the GT3s navigating through the GT4s, and for the GT4s giving space to their faster counterparts, qualifying's only one half of the story, and actually you've still got a very good opportunity to score very big points indeed if you keep out of trouble.
Keep out of trouble and you will do very, very well. We have seen over the previous esports championships that you don't have to win every race to win a championship. You have to bank, and of course trying to avoid scoring ballast and therefore compromising your pace into the next round of the championship could also be key to all of this. There then is Angus Fender on pole position. And as we get set then with just over a minute and a half to our first round of the British GT Esports Championship. Great to have you on board watching all of this. There's a lot of interest, a lot of attention for this opening round at Oulton Park. Motorsport News putting up a trophy for the GT3 champion, giving the pros something extra to aim for. And the Oulton Park full international circuit. There it is, looking down. You see the lake. You can see the road swoops around up towards the banked right of Shell Oil's corner. And then the little chicane, which used to be Fulstons, now Britons, over Hilltop, down towards Hislops into the old Knickerbrook corner, and then the climb up Clay Hill. After that, you've got the water tower, the double apex right of Druids, through the trees, under the vehicle bridge, down towards Lodge Corner, turn in, the road drops away, climb out of Dearly, over the timing line, and then, of course, you go into Old Hall Corner, which is turn 1, and that is the part of the circuit to which they will accelerate very shortly indeed. So we are less than a minute away from getting this opening race underway. And this, as we keep saying, is going to be absolutely fascinating to see who is going to come out on top. Everybody now joining the server. And so I think we should be just about good to go. The order slightly distorted from what we had in the qualifying times, the way they've lined up. That might well be able to be affected before we do go racing, as the cars now drop down onto the track itself, and the countdown continues, ready for the first of 5 rounds of the 2021 British GT Esports Championship. There is also a €2,000 Fanatec prize bundle for the GT4 champion as well. So there's lots to shoot for in this, Paul, as we get set to go racing.
Yeah, it's a fantastic championship. It's great to see British GT added to the ever-expanding SRO Esports roster of series around the world. And it's great to see a shop window for these real-world GT3 drivers, and also, once again, for the sim racing qualified stars. These are not people, remember, for the sim racing drivers, these are not people that are signed up to teams. These are not, for the most part at least, professional paid drivers in the virtual world. Anybody can qualify for this championship. If you're fast enough, you get yourself a place on the grid. So it's a great shot window, a very high level, to be sharing a track with the likes of Jenson Button, with the likes of real world multiple British GT champions. It's a phenomenal experience. So it is very much just like the ethos of the whole SRO Esports Championship. It's for the community, it's for the players, for the gamers, for the spectators, and that usually makes for fascinating racing.
It does indeed. Now, is this going to be a BMW or McLaren race, or is it going to be Mercedes? Because you've got Sam Neary, who came from Britcar into GT racing, lining up third on the grid there. 22 is Jenson Button then for the Team Rocket RJN squad. He is going to line up behind one of his teammates, Michael O'Brien, who in turn is behind the other of the Rocket RJN McLaren's, that of James Baldwin, who, I keep saying, you would anticipate to be the favourite for all of this, given his sim racing background. He represented Great Britain within the FIA Motorsport Games in the Digital Cup, going back to its first running in 2019. So as the cars now turn their way in GT3 out of Britain's in GT4, making their way into the chicane. There you've got the Team Parker Racing GT3 Porsche of Ryan Ratcliffe just ahead of the GT4 pole position car. Luca Burke, Florian Hasse, then the two that line up at the front in the Porsche 718 Caymans, the Cayman GT4s. Great looking car, that. And the Zancho Rocket SimSport squad locking out the qualifying 15-minute period for GT4. It's so busy. Long line of cars then pouring down towards Hislops. Drivers, even in a virtual world, trying to get warmth into the tyres as the cars make the climb now up towards Druids, through that double apex right, and then we will get set to go racing. If you're new to GT racing, it's worth making the point that it's a rolling start. In other words, the cars don't stop on the grid again. If the race director is happy that everybody is in that correct Noah's Ark 2x2 formation, then the signal will be given to get the race underway. So the cars will line up now, side by side, slow the pace, and when the lights change, then we can go racing. But they don't stop on the grid, of course. Angus Fender then on that pole position, with James Baldwin lined up alongside him. Look what a crowded house it is. You see the back of the grid pouring down towards Lodge Corner as the cars then come up towards Dearly. The opening round of the British GT Esports Championship then about to get underway. Out of Dearly they come then. The lights in a moment will change to get the race underway. The run down towards Old Hall Corner beckons. Who is going to make the best start then as we go racing now? It is James Baldwin that floors the throttle from the outside of the front row. Can he go right round the outside of Angus Fender as they dive into Old Hall? The answer is yes, he can. There's drama behind as either O'Brien or Butler's got all crossed up, and off goes one of the McLarens. But as they plunge downhill for the first time, mayhem coming out of Old Hall Corner, and there, look, through on the inside goes O'Brien. It was Jenson Button, I think, that was in strife, but Baldwin, really brave. Did it work for him? Yes, it did. James Baldwin leads, Paul, from the outside of row one.
Fabulous start in GT3 for James Baldwin. Exactly what he needed to achieve, David. Get that early start, get the clean air in front of him and try and use his natural pace to push ahead of the rest of the field. But Baldwin was only second on the grid in qualification, so there's still a very good chance that he might start dropping back into the clutches of the chasing pack. But very clean up front and a little bit of contact further down in GT4.
Yes, there was, and there's more drama almost brewing up in GT3 as there's a rub and James Baldwin goes off the road and back on again, but he's all compromised. So now Angus Fender comes up to have a go on the outside. Can't do it there, going into Knickerbrook. Michael O'Brien runs third as now Fender with that grunt and go. BMW gets up alongside. Past the water tower they go and Fender retakes the lead. That was brave stuff going up towards Druids. And what triggered all of that was that slight moment going too late on the brakes into Hislop. So Baldwin, having battled his way to the front, has got to do it all over again.
Superb stuff at the front of the field, absolutely superb. A little bit aggressive from Angus Fender, but this is Oulton Park. You need to get your elbows out if you want to make a position up on the circuit, and Baldwin does lose position now, so drops into second place. And actually O'Brien in the sister McLaren looking interested in the back of James Baldwin at the moment. So intense stuff, just as we predicted at the start of the broadcast, David. Fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
And Jack McIntyre, up from the third GT4 row, has got himself into the lead of the GT4 class. So very, very good start by Jack McIntyre, who's a very busy sim racer. He was doing the VRRC Touring Car Esports Series yesterday, for example. He's been racing in the VRRC's Mini Championship as well. So McIntyre is ahead of Burke and Haase in GT4 right now as the leading, what have we got, 4, 5 in a line pretty much. They're all bunching up coming towards Hislops. So that's Fender, Baldwin, O'Brien, Neary and then Ben Green going after them over the brow. Now this in 7th place is Bobby Trundley, the autistic driver who represents Team Brit, and he is right on the tail of Sandy Mitchell, the reigning British GT champion. Look at this.
Fantastic. And Trundley driving the Aston Martin, which is in Assetto Corsa Competizione and GT3 in general a little bit of a more of a stable car than the Lamborghini is chasing down. At Oulton Park, you need to use the curbs to get a good lap time. The car is very much on its tippy toes, so Trundley maybe in a more compliant car in the opening laps of the race, and he's looking to take advantage of that one and close down the Lamborghini again. As Ben David, we're looking at the battle in GT4.
And how many's in this little battle pack? 7 all in a queue. Jody Fannin there battling with Tom Canning. Ferrari versus Aston Martin, proper sports car brands both, on the back of the Porsche as well as they come up. Then Ryan Ratcliffe is making good progress for Team Parker Racing in the Porsche there, and he's on the back of Johnny Adam. So it's Johnny Adam at the head of the queue, 4 times British champion, the most successful driver in the championship's history. But right now Johnny has got his mirrors absolutely full. Ryan Ratcliffe, then Jody Fannin, Tom Canning is next, and behind them is Jack Lemmer as they dive down through Cascades. Throw Adam Morgan into the melting pot as well in the Sicily Mercedes AMG. This is quite something. Trouble is, of course, with Johnny Adam having to go defensive and hold them all up like this, he is losing touch with the line of cars ahead of him. So Johnny Adam losing out. Adam Morgan in the gravel, so he's had a drama going into Charles Oil's corner, but Adam, by defending, he's compromising his pace, isn't he?
He is, and this is the danger on a circuit like Oulton Park, the cork in the bottle effect, where the driver at the head of the queue just doesn't have the speed of the cars further back, and overtaking being so difficult in these cars on this circuit. Defending is only going to slow you down yet further. We see one of the Porsches missing the chicane entirely, going down the escape road. He'll return nice and safe, be careful on track redrawing, which he does, and gets back in to the loop again. But these cars are going to start losing distance to cars ahead of them, and it's so frustrating as a driver. Do you take a risk? Do you push to find a way past? Because you can see the field moving further and further away in the cockpit.
Well, right now, Ryan Ratcliffe is getting pretty busy about all of this as the cars dive down towards Lodge. Ratcliffe having another go at Tom Canning, I should say, as they turn through, and Canning goes up on the inside, so that takes away 10th place. But Ryan Ratcliffe is on his toes as they come through over the timing line, and also having a go at all of this, Jack Lemmer then. So you've got Canning, Ratcliffe, Lemmer, 10th, 11th and 12th as the cars dive downhill once again. Now let's have a look at a replay of the start. This might piece together exactly what kicked off at the first corner, because there you've got a sideways Samir Ibrahimi with the Audi. Whoops, and he almost got collected by the Chevrolet there, but goes and headbutts the wall. and you had Jenson Button digging himself off the lawn and rejoining as well in the McLaren. So a pretty lively start, Paul, as we rather expected.
Indeed, and it's a real shame to see Samir Ibrahimi facing the wrong way so early in the race. A driver that we've seen in SRO Esports competition before, very much at the forefront of the field in GT3 spec cars. So I was fascinated to see how he'd fare in GT4 competition. So shame for Ibrahimi, and this is exactly the kind of thing that you've got to be careful. We spoke about at the top of the broadcast. Pace is one thing, racing at the front of the field's another, but staying out of trouble. This is a championship. There are points for each and every race. Score big, stay consistent, and that is what makes prizes at the end of the year. So big shame for Ibrahimi, but he's still got plenty of time ahead of him to try and close that gap and get into the top 10 point scoring positions in class.
Absolutely right. There is Moritz Lerner in 19th place, trying to keep Niels Naujoks at bay. Now here you've got two of the top sim racing drivers. Niels Naujoks, who looks after the G2 team. He also manages the Red Bull Esports team. He won the Esports Grand Final on the virtual Suzuka last year. So Niels Naujoks, massively experienced driver, isn't he, within sim racing? And they're getting a little bit carried away coming out of Druid, hooked a wheel onto the dirt.
Yep, Naujoks, fabulous name, fabulous driver, surprisingly low down the running order in 6th position, but here we go to a replay, David.
This is a replay for the start, so let's try and work out what happened to Jenson Button. So look to the right-hand side of the grid. He's on the 3rd row. He turns in, and Jenson gets tagged by Ben Green, and oh so nearly got harpooned by others. And look, one or two more go very, very wide in avoidance. That was another of the BMWs badly delayed there, look, rejoining. So it all kicked off at turn 1. They all survived it, but that shuffled the order. And of course, straight away, Paul, it puts GT3 cars behind GT4.
Yeah, but that's another element that can't be discounted. We spoke about the speed differential of GT3 and GT4. They are very much different classes. GT3 very much the top of those two classes. Sandy Mitchell now under a little bit of pressure from the Aston behind. But it is difficult to find your way through. And if you take 3, 4, 5 corners, even a lap to get past one of your lower class rivals, that is time that you're just giving away to the rest of the field. And David, with things so competitive in both GT3 and GT4, you cannot afford to leave that amount of lap time out on the circuit for any period of time. Otherwise, your entire day is going to be significantly compromised, isn't it?
Absolutely right. And right now, Johnny Adam is having to defend from Jody Fannin in the Ferrari. Jody, named after Jody Scheckter. He has South African parentage, or half the parents from South Africa, so it's a nod to Jody Scheckter, the 1979 Formula 1 world champion. And Jody, much underrated driver, right on the back of Johnny Adam. As you look back now from Sandy Mitchell's Lamborghini, Bobby Trundley in the Aston doing a really good job of staying with him. Sandy Mitchell running in 6th place in the Barwell Lamborghini, single-seater convert turned GT racer. So it's been a lively start to the race. Baldwin fighting back at fender. Mitchell in the meantime is under attack. Starting to pair off a little bit, aren't they? Because you can see the gaps are opening up now as we get into the race.
Yeah, they are, as we're seeing. Very amusing to see Sandy Mitchell having his been flashed by Trundley behind. So the British GT real world champion, being flashed by Bobby Trundley in the Aston Martin behind, trying to put off Mitchell. But Mitchell's a wise campaigner. He's not going to be fazed by that one. And Johnny Adam now under significant pressure from Jody Fannin in the Ferrari. Adam on the inside, spots his braking zone nice and tight, and no way past for the Ferrari. And this is the thing, isn't it, David, on this track? Clearly, Fannin is the faster of the two drivers, but he just can't find the Ferrari space gap alongside that Aston Martin anywhere out on track.
And that's it. You position the car absolutely right, and you've still got 50 minutes of the race to go, so a lot can yet pan out. So keep out of trouble for the moment. Johnny Adam knows how to win races, of course, as there Florian Hasse dances over the curb at Britain's. Now he's in 17th place overall. He's third in the GT4 competition right now, but he's also being given a tough time by Maciej Malinowski, because he too is closing up in the very pretty little Alpine next in the queue. So you're looking here at the 3rd and 4th battle within GT4, whereas up front it's Porsche's 1 and 2. Jack McIntyre ahead of Luca Burke. Lower down the order is the KTM there of Igor Ogrodnikov. Quick word about whom. He was the 3rd KTM qualifier, but Jesus Cecilia didn't get himself to the ping test on time, so he couldn't take part in the race. And if you like, as first reserve, Ogrodnikov got the nod to take part at Oulton Park. 22nd overall he lies at the moment on the back of Chris Herker in the Audi.
Yeah, but Igor Ogrodnikov, very exciting driver. We've seen a lot of him in eSport competition for the SRO Championships in the past. Very much all arms and elbows, often getting the car into different positions than one would expect a downforce-driven GT4 car. And Ogrodnikov, great to see him out on circuit. And he seems to be standing up to the competition very well indeed. So Herka ahead, another really, really fast driver. And Ogrodnikov still in the mix for good points today.
An incident on lap 1 involving Gus Burton and Tom Canning, a drive-through penalty for Tom Canning, number 1 Aston Martin. There's confirmation, so a drive-through penalty for car number 1 Tom Canning, who is currently 10th. You can see DT goes up on the timing tower to say he's got a drive-through penalty. He's got to serve it, so that is going to shuffle the order outside that top 10 as Florian Hassler is coming under renewed attack, isn't he, from Maciej Malinovski. The Huntford Racing Alpine right behind him. There is the number 2 Chris Herka Audi that's dropped a place or two over the early stages of the race, but Herka remains one to watch as now you see the recovering GT3 cars having to get through the GT4 traffic. That is the delayed Gus Burton. That was the BMW we saw off the road at Old Hall on the first lap, and now look at this, he's got the quicker car. What he has to try to find, Paul, is the width of the road to squeeze past the traffic.
Yeah, that's incredibly tense times for both GT3 and GT4 drivers. It's so easy when you're in a battle such as these GT4 cars are. And a GT4 car, for those at home that maybe have not tried it in ACC, it's very much a momentum car. It's the kind of car that you need to keep the minimum speed up as high as you possibly can. When you're in the heart of a battle, you've got drivers in front, drivers behind. Often it's quite challenging to recognise a different class car is in the mix. You don't get blue flags, of course, because you're racing for track position. So very dangerous times for any GT3 trying to work their way through the field as Malinovski riding on board through Cascades now. Beautiful shots on board the Alpine, I believe it is.
It is indeed. Yeah, and of course you have to sympathise a bit for the GT4 drivers if they've got the GT3 traffic getting past them, because they're in their own battle, they're in their own race. They don't want to have that compromised by getting out of the way for a GT3 car, because they could lose touch with the GT4 car they're fighting with, and it compromises their race. Now this is for 4th and 5th. Ben Green, there he is in the BMW, right on the back of Michael O'Brien, who didn't just shine in GT3 but also in historic racing at Goodwood at the Speed Weekend last year, and he is looking for a way to try to keep Ben Green at bay as they plunge downhill once again. Up front, Angus Fender is just stretching the lead gap slightly, 1.8 seconds now. Sam Neary there going through the shot, he runs 3rd in the Mercedes, and the gap is widening. He's dropping away slightly from the top 2, but it's game on for 4th. Michael O'Brien, 2nd generation racer. His dad Mike O'Brien, single-seater racer, touring car racer. He's keeping Ben Green at bay. The top 6 still rounded out by Sandy Mitchell.
Yeah, we're starting to see a little bit of field spread now, as you would expect from these GT3 drivers. All got very different experience and levels of practice and preparation for their virtual racing event that we're having today in the British GT Esports Championship. So a bit of field spread there, but somewhere with no field spread is GT4, as you would expect. All drivers very experienced in this sim, in this type of car, in this type of racing, and that battle continues on. But Ben Green very much looking like he's got the pace advantage over O'Brien in front of him, and we're getting closer, David. It's 46 minutes left on the clock. We're getting ever closer to that pit window, so Ben Green's got a bit of a conundrum ahead of him. Does he push and try and find a way past, or does he wait for strategy on pit window?
It is a good question, isn't it? I mean, right now you could argue that he's being delayed, so he needs to get out of that traffic. Danger is he then joins in the GT4 traffic, but in fairness, everybody has to take account of the traffic on their rejoin from the pit stop. So you might win, you might lose. It's all part of the gamble, all part of the strategy. As they're diving through the traffic is James Baldwin. Now the lappery has started, so he's hustling on behind the race leader. The gap is up to 2.2 seconds, so Angus Fender looking really impressive right now, coping with the traffic very nicely. And look, James Baldwin being held up a little bit there. He's got to be bold, he's got to be brave around the outside at Island Bend, on the inside for Shell Oils. Through he goes, but all of that has cost him time. So Angus Fender, who came out of Ginetta Racing, GT5s and the Super Cup, that's Sam Neary in stride. Now he's got it wrong at Shell, and Sam Neary is going to lose a place or 2. Yes, he has. He's going to drop back, isn't he, behind O'Brien and also Ben Green. So Sam Neary delayed in the GT4 traffic. That has compromised him, and he's gone now down to 5th place by my reckoning as the cars come over Hilltop. But that shows the perils of the traffic, doesn't it?
It does exactly. It's such a difficult part. We see a little bit of contact between a GT3 and one of the GT4s. He's putting a lap on. That is O'Brien, I think it was, door to door. So again, just shows you the field of view of the drivers in the cockpit is very, very restricted. It's very easy to lose positioning of where you are, unlike in the real world where you can quite literally turn your head and you can hear the spatial sound of cars around you. Much more difficult in a virtual space to know exactly at any one time where other cars are, and I think O'Brien can consider himself very lucky to have got away lightly from that bit of contact with a slower car.
He can. So we'll have another look at that. Let's just try and pinpoint what's been going on. This is Sam Neary, first of all, who tried to get up the inside of traffic and ended up cannoning off the Audi. Said that's why he was delayed. Slews across the road, and as he sorts himself out, loses 2 places then, and past him go both O'Brien and also then Ben Green. So that's how Sam Neary ended up in 5th place. This is his view as he tries to fight back down towards Island Bend, closing onto the GT4 traffic. Is he going to be able to find a way through here on the inside? The Camaro slides to one side, gets out of his way. Sam Neary takes track position, but he's lost quite a chunk of time, hasn't he, now, relative to Ben Green in the BMW, who again is absolutely stuck fast behind Michael O'Brien. He cannot get by.
Yeah, that fight between Green and O'Brien has turned out for the bottom step of the podium now. Now Neary's taking himself out of contention a little bit, and it seems like O'Brien is really the cork in the bottle at the moment. The BMW, the chasing BMW, very much the faster of the 2 cars, and this is good news for Sam Neary. Although he's lost time in the incident, while those 2 continue to fight further afield, he can pull himself back into contention as Mortis Lorna now in 19th position in the GT4 McLaren, under significant pressure from Nils Naujoks, still in the BMW behind. Naujoks throws the car down the inside, not enough gap to get too wide, and this is incredible racing.
Naujoks all over him like a rash, isn't he, as they drop downhill, then heading in towards Cascades, but Moritz Lerner is just about fending him off, or is he? There's half a gap, but a BMW can be a wide old beast, and there wasn't quite room, even though I think Nils Naujoks probably breathed in there. He still couldn't squeeze up the inside, so you have the very rapid Lerner driver, in a sense, Moritz Lerner, keeping Nils Naujoks at bay. Chris Herker is catching up to them as well, so any moment Naujoks is going to have to go defensive, but he's on the attack here, coming out of Shell. How's the BMW got the grunt? Let's see. Paulie's got the inside. Is he going to get alongside him and make the move?
He's on the outside now for the chicane. Not quite enough room to run cars too wide through that corner. And Mortis Lerner, great driving to keep himself in the middle of the racetrack, not giving Naujoks enough room to make an overtake, but enough for fair racing. Chris Herker now trying to buy into this fire as well. So Naujoks has gone from the attacker to the defender in one fell swoop, which is exactly the kind of racing we expect in this GT4 classification. And Chris Herker in the Audi R8 LMS GT4 is the man on the move at the moment, but he's carrying with him a string of 3 other GT4 cars behind as a GT3 makes his way through. It's happening at all corners of this circuit, David.
And that's the race leader, is it not? Trying to get through the traffic. That's Angus Fender, I think I'm right in saying it is. There is the recovering Sam Neary, then onto the back of Ben Green. So this is all quite interesting. So Ben Green losing touch now with Michael O'Brien, because he partly has lost time somewhere, but also he's losing more by going defensive against Neary. It is all happening right now around Oulton Park as we get closer to the pit window. BMW versus Mercedes, drama at Old Hall, KTM off the road, and it's 41 that's in strife there. Igor Ogrodnikov then, the Lada Sport Rosneft car, gets collected, and there is mayhem coming out of Old Hall. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And Ogrodnikov eventually hits the button and heads for the pit lane, which at least clears the circuit, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a sensible move from Ogrodnikov. It's a shame because he could have got back out on the track and still been in decent position, but he decides it's a bit of a danger sideways into T1, so escapes back to pit lane. Ogrodnikov will keep an eye on him. He may be able to return to the track after a short delay due to that return to pits, but very, very typical of Oulton Park. We're riding now with Lemmer, Jack Lemmer in the Barwell Motorsports car, getting up close and personal with the traffic around.
So drama all the way, and we are 5 minutes or so off the pit window opening, as there is 67 then, Florian Hasse. Whoops, more drama, 2 cars off. One of them looks like Ryan Ratcliffe, so the Porsche is on the grass by the look of it, and Jack Lemmer is the other in the Lamborghini. And he's about to get collected. Was that Tom Canning that arrived out of nowhere in the Aston Martin? So a rejoin. Yeah, that's going to get looked at, I would have thought. The incident itself and then the rejoin. So that's 3 more cars in strife heading up towards the right of Shell Oil's corner. That wasn't in the plot, was it? We weren't expecting that, Paul.
Everything's getting a bit happy hour now, isn't it? Everybody seems to be getting a little bit more ragged. The race started very sensible indeed, but as we're getting closer and closer to the pit window, people are starting to put things a bit further, closer to the edge of what is acceptable and not on track. And unfortunately, like I say, a bit of a dangerous rejoin there, collected the Aston Martin as well, which is entirely innocent in that manoeuvre. So a shame, but they will all live to fight another day, and there's still 39 minutes of racing left ahead of us, so plenty of time for things to filter out. And I'm just looking down the running order now, David, for Ogrodnikov. He has indeed, I believe, returned to the circuit, but he is in position, well, he's still in pit lane, 31st at the moment. So whether we see Ogrodnikov again.
And there, Bobby Trundley has got himself involved with Sandy Mitchell and mayhem coming out of Old Hall. Trundley rejoins, and Michael O'Brien was involved in all of that, and he too is out of the race now. So there is Sandy Mitchell going off at Cascades. I fear he is not long for the race. You've got Ryan Ratcliffe in the pit lane, and all of these are with damage. These aren't routine stops. So 2 significant big incidents in quick succession. So that's hacked away at the order, and indeed the number of cars still running within GT3 as there. Ben Green has to go defensive to keep Sam Neary at bay, and also tries to get himself through the traffic. But we've lost Ratcliffe, we've lost O'Brien, and you see the importance of keeping out of trouble as there, tapping the tail. Sam Neary says, come on, hurry up, I'm quicker than you, I was ahead earlier, get out of the way. Ben Green is not to be denied that 3rd place though, is he?
Yeah, very intense fighting at the front of the field, and this just goes to show Sam Neary we saw in difficulty a few laps ago, but he's got his head down, he's kept his car on the trike, and the race is starting to come back to him as well. So this is a perfect example of just need to finish the race as neat as possible as a replay.
Right, let's try and piece together who did what to which and to whom here. I think this is the Ratcliffe-Lemmer incident, so have a look at the Porsche coming up now towards Island Bend. Ryan Ratcliffe delayed in traffic, and he goes to the outside, gets sideways, came across the road and collected Jack Lemmer. So Ryan Ratcliffe made a mistake, Jack Lemmer got involved in that. They cross over on the grass, try and rejoin, wait for the Aston Martin, boom, that was Tom Canning arriving. Jack Lemmer gets more damage, limps on, Canning gets out of the gravel, but that was 3 GT3 cars effectively eliminated in one fell swoop. Look at the traffic now, just ahead of Ben Green. He's got the GT3 recovering Porsche of Ryan Ratcliffe to get past. He's trying to keep a GT3 car at bay. This is all part and parcel of real world GT racing, isn't it? Managing the traffic and knowing who you're meant to be fighting against, Paul.
Yeah, that is often. It sounds simple in reality from us sat at home in the comfort of our desks looking on the monitor, but trying to know who you're fighting and where to push, where to be conservative, when you need to go for that gap and when you can afford to follow the car for the next couple of corners. That's an art form in itself, and this is an endurance race as such, but 60 minutes is not a long time in these cars. So again, you've got to take every opportunity as and when it comes through to you. We've seen an incident on lap 3 involving car 25 and 59, a drive-through penalty for car number 59, which is Andrew Watson in the Garage 59 Aston Martin Vantage GT3. So Watson drive-through penalty, not too big of a disadvantage at Oulton Park. It is a fairly quick pit lane here at Oulton, but still Watson disappointed, no doubt.
Yeah, the driver he was involved with was Adam Morgan, who is perhaps better known as a British Touring Car Championship race winner, but his team, the family team SRO Motorsport, coming into GT4 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship this season, and Adam keeping his hand in before he goes real world racing with exploits in sim racing. But it's a shame that he was delayed. I think we saw him in the gravel at Cascades quite early on in the race. However, in GT4, what is going on? Because Jack McIntyre remarkably still leads and he's up into 13th place overall. He's being a bit of a revelation here ahead of Luca Burke and then Florian Hauser next up within the GT4 fight. The pit window is about to open. Now this might explain why we lost Michael O'Brien. He got a tickle from behind, didn't he, by Ben Green, and around went the McLaren, and then bang, he harpoons, wow, Sandy Mitchell, who gets airborne, and Mitchell took Trundley with him, and Trundley gets hit by others, and that was quite some moment. That's reminiscent in some ways of the Hunter Abbott Ginetta accident at Oulton Park many years ago without the flames, but that was a sizable one at that part of the circuit. So that explains why we lost quite a chunk of the GT3 contingent there, but those that are still racing have now just over 34 and 3/4 minutes to sort themselves out, and a lot can shake out of this race yet, Paul.
It can indeed, and the pit window is now open. So to clarify, for those of you at home, pit window is 10 minutes in length. It is open now. You can see at the top of your screen in the little white box with green on either side, that's the countdown for when the pit window closes. Every car must go down pit road during this period, must stop, must take on at a minimum 1 litre of fuel, and they can decide what they wish to do with tyres. Do they keep the boots on that they started the race, or do they want to change tyres at pit stop? They can also decide if they want to repair any damage as well, but of course the more work you do on your car, the longer that you're stationary in pit lane as well. So a bit of a strategic decision from our drivers. And just while we're doing a little bit of clearing up, while we've got a moment's breathing space in this race, if you look to the left hand side of your screen at the timing stack, just to clarify for those of you at home that are maybe not too familiar, you can distinguish between GT3 and GT4 on the timing screen by the little purple tick in the corner of where the number is. So Jack McIntyre, 13th place, number 37, has the little purple marker on. That signifies GT4. So Jack McIntyre, the leader of our GT4 class. And then the little number in orange next to it says whether they've completed their mandatory pit stop or not. So a number 1 means it's still got 1 to go. The green means pit stops, all done and done. There's Neil Nalyuk's David looking all over the back of the McLaren ahead.
And he might be able to make a move here because the McLaren of Moritz Lerner gets a little bit crossed up. Yes, talking about those pit stops, Jody Fannin has just served his. Now, Andrew Watson has been credited with serving a pit stop, but I just wonder whether that was his drive-through. Might need to have another look at seeing whether he makes 2 stops over the course of the race, Andrew Watson. But Lerner versus Nalyuk, again, you get an impression here, Paul, don't you, of how difficult it can be to overtake around Oulton Park. Nalyuk's top draw sim racer, but he cannot find a way past Lerner, and he's been trying so to do for many, many laps. Can he prise open the door at Lodge Corner? Again, no is the answer. Somehow that McLaren just fends off the BMW, and so now Nalyuk says, forget it, I'm going for the pit lane, get this mandatory stop out of the way, and around there goes a Ginetta, I fear.
Yep. Wise move by Nalyuk today. Get down pit lane, get out of the battle, stop losing time, get that stop served, and hope that you come out in a little bit of clean air on track, as we're seeing the Aston in the background dive down pit lane as well. And that's a good move from Nalyuk. He knows he's got the natural speed in the car. If he can be good on his out lap, then he'll be able to move. He'll be able to move up the field naturally. As I'm hearing in our ear now, David, that Watson has done his drive-through and his mandatory pit stop as well. So Watson out on circuit, 10th position at the moment, 3rd, 4th of those that have made a pit stop.
And Jody Fannin in the Ferrari is the leading pit stopper. Now, I noticed a moment ago that Sam Neary was being shown as having a drive-through next to his name, but there it is, confirmed. It's a drive-through penalty to car 8 because it was the incident that involved 49 Samir Abrahimi on lap 10. So Sam Neary being given a drive-through for contact, so that's going to drop him out of contention as well. You see they're going through Chris Hooker in the GT4 Audi in the sort of pseudo Gulf colours as he climbs the hill. There is Neary with that Damocletian drive-through still hanging over him. And 1 or 2 of the drivers that have now retired from the race in the chat talking about driving standards, which is perhaps not a surprise. It has been a somewhat, how can I put this, fractious opening to the race, but I'm sure that will be addressed ready for the second round of the British GT Esports Championship as we approach half distance. And increasingly now, the drivers have to factor in this pit stop, don't they?
They do indeed. We're seeing 1 or 2 drivers down pit road. We saw James Baldwin from 2nd position make an earlier stop than the race leader. So Baldwin will be looking again to try and find a little bit pace that he's been missing so far in that McLaren GT3. So he'll be hopeful of a bit of clear racetrack ahead of him. And naturally, with a pit window and different strategies, we'll get a little bit of field spread at this stage in the race. So there will be cars like Luca Burke that we're looking at in GT4, in the Porsche Cayman, that have got nobody in front or behind. These strategies will converge as we go down. But now we're seeing, I think there's a damaged McLaren. That's Florian Hasse racing through the field. So a few cars as well carrying damage. And David, this is the time of the stage in the race where as a driver, it's often a little bit confusing, isn't it, as to where exactly you're going to shake out in the overall scheme of things.
But this is, I just love long distance racing and pit stop races because there is so much to shake out of them. You've got Jody Fannin as an early pit stop, and now we've also had James Baldwin serve his stop. So he's dropped down from second place, but he's still ahead of Jody Fannin. So Baldwin is the leading pit stopper. Fannin, of course, now is being compromised. So he's stuck in the traffic. These two are having their own battle. It's Florian Hauser just ahead of Maxime Battifoulier, who finally allows the quicker Ferrari to go by. Now Florian Hauser will come under attack from the GT3 car, but they're having their own race, much as Jody Fannin is, and Jody dives for the inside at Druids. That was a good, clean pass, wasn't it? That's how it can be done.
Yeah, very decisive. That's the key, I think, isn't it? You see an opportunity, you show the car nice and early what you intend to do, and then you pull off the move without any kind of dramatics or sideways action. So great driving from Fannin and everybody else as well to give him the space he needs in order to do that one. And you mentioned that some of the drivers that have retired are complaining about driving standards. We have to remember, this is the first race of the season. Oulton Park is a vitally difficult racetrack at the best of times, and we've got a bunch of drivers that are coming into this with perhaps less experience than is ideal in this kind of racing environment. So all things considered, I'm been quite impressed with what I've seen out on circuit so far.
Now, one driver that's not impressed is Igor Ogrodnikov. We saw the KTM off the road. He was given a helping hand into that by Arthur Camara, and Camara is being given a 10-second stop-and-go penalty.
Ooh.
So Arthur Camara, who was the winner, you might recall, of the Monza Esports charity race, the very first SRO Esports race at the back end of March last year, he's being given a 10-second stop-go penalty. So a big disappointment for Arthur Camara, another of the G2 team drivers, so he will tumble down the order accordingly. Pit window open for only another 3 minutes. Now you'll notice from the timing tower that Angus Fender has also stopped and he has retained his race lead. This is Jack McIntyre, who has lost his GT4 advantage now to Niels Naujoks, because Naujoks is ahead of him. So Jack Mack, who led the first stint, had a slower stop, and there the BMW, one car but one up the road, is the target. So suddenly the complexion in GT4 changes absolutely, doesn't it?
It does indeed, and he's firmly in the heart of traffic as well. So this is going to be critical times. The tyres are going to be cold. The brakes are going to be relatively cold compared to their ideal operating temperature out on circuit. So the car's probably at its most vulnerable it will be at any stage in the race, and trying to keep your head, trying to position yourself through the traffic, give enough space, because of course if you don't give space to the faster GT3s after so many corners, you're likely to attract a penalty from the stewards as well for not respecting blue flags. Very, very tense time for every driver on the circuit at the moment. And McIntyre, 18th position at this moment in time, but he needs to get a wiggle on if he wants to maintain his overall classification position.
Look at this traffic diving downhill. Replay here of contact. That was Florian Hauser getting involved with the BMW. Was that the Ben Green BMW? Couldn't see him, I'm afraid, but both rejoined, albeit somewhat delayed. So, more contact as they rejoin. Crikey, I hope the race director wasn't expecting an early night after all of this. He's got a lot of things to keep looking at, I suspect. So the results, when we get to the end of the race, all will have to have that word provisional in front of them. Right, this is Naujoks, and he is now, in fact, second himself in GT4, because it is the Alpine, is it not now, of Maciej Malinowski that has got ahead. So Malinowski, then Naujoks, and then Jack McIntyre. That is the new top three, so a really different complexion.
Yes, all change in GT4 as we've seen a stop-go penalty applied to Lemmer now. So Jack Lemmer's got a stop-and-go penalty, 30 seconds, which is a significant time loss at any circuit at Oulton Park as well. Such a short lap here at Oulton Park in these cars. We're going three wide now, David. Whoa!
They just about got away with that. Yeah, Jack Lemmer and also Ryan Ratcliffe being given a 30-second stop-go penalty for the incident at Island Bend early on. You might recall that was the one that did for Tom Canning. So here they come down towards Lodge Corner. This is the GT4 lead you're looking at. So you've got the Alpine of Malinowski just ahead of the BMW of Naujoks, whereas Jack McIntyre, number 37 Porsche, is a bit stuck in traffic further back down the road, and he needs to get a wriggle on, because now there is another of the McLarens to worry about. In fact, he's fourth in the class, isn't he? Because Moritz Lerner has got ahead of him as well. So I'm intrigued to know what has happened to McIntyre, having done such a good job in the first stint. Was it a slow pit stop, or did he do something in terms of repairing anything. Well, he lost 2 seconds, we understand, in that pit stop, taking on more fuel, maybe, or something more sinister. Who knows? We'll find out post-race, I'm sure, but that 2 seconds has really done for Jack McIntyre, hasn't it?
It has indeed, and just going back for a moment to this fight between Nils Naujoks and Malinowski ahead of him, we suggested that Naujoks had the pace in the BMW, but he just needed to find a way to unlock it to clear the traffic ahead of him. And already we've seen Naujoks put in a few fast laps very quickly, attached himself to the rear of the Alpine ahead. So Luca Berg is our GT4 classification leader in the Porsche. Nils Naujoks, though, is the man on the move, David, and he's trying every trick in the book. I feel sorry for Naujoks. He spent the entirety of the first half of the race trying to find some space. It's Ben Green going slowly through T1, so Green must have had a bit of a pirouette through Old Hull Corner, and that's pretty... Oh, he's off again. This is difficult for Ben Green.
That's not a happy car, is it? He's had a couple of incidents, I think, so Ben Green has got a problem. That was Adam Morgan in the Sicily Merc getting up and past him, and Jody Fannin goes through. Now, Jody Fannin, look at this, quietly getting on with the job, keeping out of trouble. He's up into 3rd place. Now, granted, he's got quite a lot of real estate to make up before he can attack anybody else up the road, but Jody Fannin's doing a really impressive job out of all of this, as there, Mashish Malinowski comes over the line. Yes, apologies to Luca Berg. I'd rather ignore him. So the Porsche does lead GT4. So this is for second. Malinowski versus Naujoks, then Lerner, and then McIntyre. So sadly, the more we find in GT4, the worse it looks for Jack Mack, because there he is a long way down now.
He is indeed, and Luca Burt there you see at the front of the shot, and the chasing second place fight behind, so still tight, still very, very tight on track for GT4 as we're looking at Rodriguez in the KTM now, trying to go round the outside of Will Tregurtha. No, it's not Tregurtha, it's Samir Ibrahimi in the Audi, doesn't do it, runs out of road a little bit, and that opens the door for the bright yellow BMW as well. So these cars all as one at the opening portion of the lap, and very intense times, a GT3 car in the mix as well, so we have to get out of the way, does Rodriguez, to allow the GT3 pass. But this just goes to show, doesn't it, David, exactly how intense these drivers are fighting for every last position in their category. The fight for first is just as intense as the fight for 20th down the running order. It's just that we see more of them on camera at the front of the field, and a great display of talent, isn't it?
Absolutely right, and it's been an action-packed race as we rather expected. Now, this might explain why Ben Green was struggling. Well, he got it wrong at Old Hall. Does he hit anything, or does he get hit by anybody? Let's see. Gus Burton, his teammate, goes by. So he rejoins. That's why we saw the car slow coming towards us, but then he was off again at Cascades. Ben Green is still circulating. Now, so too, of course, is James Baldwin, who runs second. And there, look, the gap is coming down again against Angus Fender. So it is just over 1 second. And right now, you've got to say that Baldwin looks the quicker of the two. It was 1 second at the start of the lap, and it's half a second at the completion of the last timing point on the next lap. Here they come. Break the beam now over the timing line. It's down to 0.3 of a second. And Ben Green now gets a drive-through penalty. So if you manage to keep the clerk of the course sweet, the race director on side, you're going to be okay out of this. But right now then, you've got Fender versus Baldwin battling for the race lead, and if they hold themselves up, Jody Fannin might be able to get a bit closer, but he's a long way back. So drive-through penalty for Ben Green. The incident involved Michael O'Brien. We saw that coming out of Old Hall early on, remember. So here is the lead battle, BMW versus McLaren. It takes us back, Paul, to lap 1, doesn't it?
It does indeed. It's taken a while for James Baldwin to come alive in that McLaren, but alive he certainly is now, all over the back of the BMW. Traffic in the mix as well, and this is James Baldwin's moment. This is his time to use all his virtual racing experience. I'm sure he's set his car up as well to be stronger in the second half of the race, and this is going to be a fight to the death between Fender and Baldwin at the front of the field, I feel.
Well, they've got through the traffic, but you saw how that delayed James Baldwin for a moment as the cars now power up Clay Hill. 20 minutes to go, so we're just about to nudge into the last third of the race. And because Baldwin was delayed, so the BMW gets away. But we knew that traffic was going to be key to all of this, and there's more evidence of it right there. So Fender, Baldwin, and then Jody Fannin, who is over half a minute back. Remember, he was not really part of that leading group early on, but he's kept out of trouble. He's bought position. Johnny Adam will go fourth at the expense of Ben Green with his drive-through next time around, as the leaders will power their way past the pits. Moritz Lerner goes through and turns into Old Hall, keeping Jack McIntyre in the Porsche Cayman, the 718 iteration of the Cayman GT4 Club Sport, right there behind him. And through all the traffic is the recovering Jack Lemmer. So this is 4 position, and Lemmer goes through, does he? Yeah, gets himself ahead there. First of Naujoks, then of Malinowski. So the GT3 Lamborghini for Barwell Motorsport powers through.
And that opens up the door now for Nils Naujoks to have another little nibble at the back of that Alpine for the lead for second place, in GT4. Luca Burke just ahead of these fighting cars, trying to get as much space, as much free air as he possibly can between himself and the chasing pack. But Naujoks looks like a man who's very much on a mission. He just needs a few clean laps. No GT3s in the mix to really put the effort in against that second position car as we're riding. McIntyre now going slowly again, passed by a GT3.
Well, absolutely, and those are the leaders of GT3, and they are about to get up to Naujoks. So when you said he didn't have to worry about GT3 cars, you're absolutely right, but they're that quick, they're right with him now, and look at this for the race lead. Baldwin tries to get round the outside of Fender, 2 wheels on the lawn. He's going to do it, is he? He's got the inside for Druids, but he's done it. Fantastic move. James Baldwin then goes through, grabs the race lead, and straight away he's got to defend from Angus Fender. He's got to attack to get past the GT4 traffic. He gets past Naujoks, he gets past Malinowski down towards Lodge Corner. Fender is right there with him. So James Baldwin is the race leader once more, and look at this, straight away he's got an advantage of about 2 lengths out of Dearly. That was great driving, wasn't it?
Absolutely sensational stuff. And Nils Naujoks now around the outside of the Alpine, not quite enough space, tries to do the cutback, doesn't have enough of a run in the BMW, but Nils Naujoks wanting to make a position change, coming down through the avenue into Denton's on the outside line. Be careful not to run the car off the racetrack at this point. Masinowski tries it himself, and yeah, David, this is why we love endurance racing, we love multi-class racing. Sensational driving for the race lead for James Baldwin.
And everybody's in a battle pretty much. Everywhere you look right now, there's something going on. So this is 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th within GT4. There is Moritz Lerner, who is trying to go back ahead of Nils Naujoks. So Naujoks was trying to attack the Alpine, remember, and he's about to lose out, is he? Moritz Lerner goes back ahead of him, and Naujoks gets all squirrely going into Britain's. That puts Jack McIntyre in a position where he can challenge coming over the brow of the hill. Chris Hooker is right there behind them as well. So epic racing this. Tom Canning's GT3 Aston, the purple car in the background, tries to wriggle its way through the mix. He gets past Hooker. McIntyre wasn't quite able to make a move against Naujoks, but Niels has spent the first stint looking for a way past Lerner. Finally he did it on the pit stops, and one tiny error and the McLaren's back ahead of him.
Incredible. It just goes to show exactly how close this field is, how fast these drivers are. They're all very much at the top of their game in these cars on this circuit. They'll have put thousands of laps worth, maybe thousands are dramatic, but certainly hundreds of laps worth of practice in to be ready for this event. And now York's gone from the attacker to now the defender, and he'll be beating his virtual steering wheel as we look at a replay, David.
A replay of Ryan Ratcliffe's Porsche to the inside, and does he run out of road there? Well, he gets a little bit of a help from Andrea Capoccia, and Capoccia in turn then gets the squeeze against, was that Gus Burton. So that all kicked off at Hislops, and it finished at Knickerbrook, the old Knickerbrook corner, and it was Capoccia, who was a race winner in the SRO GT Esports Championship last year, who came off worse, and he rejoins. Right. We've still got 16 minutes to go, so anything can yet happen. And now York's here under attack from the Porsche. That's the car in the hands of Jack McIntyre, the Zancho Rocket SimSport entry that led GT4 early on. The class now being led by his teammate, Luca Burke. They do share drives in certain sim races, but here they've got a car each. And Jack McIntyre, having dominated the first part of the race, now finds himself having to do the hard yards and get back ahead if he can, but it's not looking easy for him. And right now, Naujoks is keeping him at bay.
He is indeed, but Naujoks looks like he's struggling a little bit compared to the speed that we saw in that black BMW earlier on. So whether he's carrying a little bit of damage, whether he's hurt his tyres in the last few laps, in the hard fights and the challenges that Nils Naujoks seems to be permanently involved in this race, I'm not quite sure, but the upshot is Nils Naujoks 16th overall, 1, 2, 3, 4th in class seems to be under a little bit of pressure from McIntyre, which gives a bit of breathing space to the cars ahead of them to try and sort themselves out as we flash back to Angus Fender now. He's a driver that has not given up on this fight for first place, has he? Fender still glued to the back of James Baldwin, so Baldwin not quite escaping like we predicted he would be.
No, you're absolutely right. So James Baldwin, I mean, that might be because the BMW is well suited to Oulton Park. It might be that, of course, James Baldwin keeps finding the traffic, but we'll keep an eye to whether that gap is going to grow when there is the rare occasion for James Baldwin to be able to really get the right foot down and stretch the legs of the McLaren. But Angus Fender, you've got to say, he's keeping him on it. And look at that, he gets a really good run out of the chicane at Britain's, and there's contact down towards Hislop's. Fender is ahead of him, but he's off the road, catches the slide, sideways, bang, more contact, back into the lead goes Baldwin. So Angus Fender tried to make the move, a little bit of a rub between the two of them. The order as they come out the other side of Knickerbrook, the same as when they were coming down towards Hislop's. But that, I suspect, is going to get looked at from race control. But that was just two drivers going for the same bit of real estate, hard racing, and something had to give.
You could almost hear the collective intake of air from our viewers during that contact. Both drivers exceptionally fortunate to not be compromised more than they ended up being. But the upshot is James Baldwin now at the front of the field once again. Angus Fender once again back into second position. But that was a little bit untidy from both. But fortunately, they live to fight another day with 13 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock. Remember, no pit stops. Everybody served their mandatory pit stop now. So this is going to be a fight to the death. There's another replay here, David.
So this takes us back to Hislop's and the battles between BMWs and KTMs. And the KTM is Manuel Rodriguez sideways, bounces off the Ginetta and exits stage left into the gravel. Right, now I slightly hesitate to ask you this, Paul, because there's so much going on track. But when we're looking at all of this in a real world, or as a viewer of a sim race like this, we can see blue flags, we can see yellow flags. How do the drivers get that information in a sim? Because obviously they don't have the same perspective that we do.
They don't indeed. So just like in the real world, they've got an LCD display on their cockpit that will flash up different flag status and maybe a little bit of information about what the car is doing, tyre temperatures and pressures and your ratios and your different strategic moves. We go to a replay for a second. So this is Baldwin and the BMW, David.
It is. So Angus Fender got a really good drive, all the grunt, powering him out of the chicane. Side by side, a little bit of a nudge, so Fender is compromised, can't brake, can't slow the car down, scrabbles across the grass, but that's the real impact. As he slides sideways, he catches James Baldwin again, so it's going to get looked at. Was there any malice in that contact? Don't think so, just a racing incident between the two, for my opinion, but we'll wait and see what the race director thinks.
And
what's
frankly,
going on?
Fender was a little bit fortunate for that secondary contact with Baldwin, because that pointed the BMW back in the right direction again.
True.
As I think Fender was about to do a 360. So intense moments at the top of the time. But just to go back to your earlier question, they've got a display in their cockpit that shows them the flag status, and also they will have a virtual flag, so to speak, pop up in the top corner of the screen as well. So there are a couple of indications, but just like any good racing driver, eyes forward, very often it's difficult to miss these things on the periphery of the screen.
True enough, right, so that explains it. If you're watching sim racing for the first time and you're wondering how it all pans together for drivers in this virtual world, there down towards Lodge Corner comes Johnny Adam. Now he has been caught by Ben Green, Ben having served his drive-through, and he is hunting him down. Further down the order in 26th place overall is Alexandre Herbigno in the Nesquik Speed Mercedes. It's another of the GT4 cars, and he's squabbling with the Audi, the recovering Audi of Samir Ebrahimi. So again, we keep making the point, but pretty much everybody has got a playmate, somebody to battle against.
They have, and just to remind everybody at home very, very quickly, while this fight continues, Ebrahimi trying to go to the inside, which will become the outside for the next corner. No room there, so Ebrahimi still positioning that beautifully striking Audi behind the back of the AMG Mercedes. The top 10 will score points in each category. The top 10 finishers in GT4 will automatically be invited to the next races. Once again, we see another replay. This is a GT3 battle.
It is, mixed in with the traffic in GT4. That's Ben Green getting into the back. Oh, that was pretty uncompromising, getting into the back of the Arthur Camera BMW, I think that might have been. Certainly shovels that out of the way. So I fear that Ben, having already had one drive-through, might be on for another for that, because that was the kind of thing you might expect at Ipswich, Vauxhall Stadium for the National Banger World Final. That wasn't really a GT4 move. Anyway, back to the plot, and it remains Baldwin versus Fender for the race lead. This is Ben Green, who is fifth, and he's coming up behind Johnny Adam then, who turns his way through Druids, but the 4 times British GT champion, you've got to say right now, Paul, he's under huge pressure from Ben Green in the BMW, isn't he?
He is indeed, but Johnny Adams kind of come from nowhere. Great job to find himself in 4th position. Kind of been a little bit unassuming during the course of this race. Kept himself to himself, stayed out of trouble, not really been in the heart of any of the fights that we've seen on screen so far. And lo and behold, with 9.5 minutes left on the clock as it goes a little bit grass tracking, cuts the Oulton Park, the immaculate Oulton Park lawns at T1. Johnny Adams doing a great job in 4th position, but Ben Green, the man that we saw making space for himself, shall we say, earlier on, very much wants to liberate that 4th place from the Johnny Adam 99 Aston.
Johnny Adam, you're right, up into 4th place. Trouble is that he's lost a massive amount of time. He's the best part of a minute adrift because of being further down and losing time early on in the race by defending. So a few of the drivers, you could argue, have gained places by others having their own problems, and that elevates them. But of course, come the end of 5 rounds, the points scored are what counts for the championship. So this might all be crucial for Johnny. He knows how to win championships in British GT. As off the road has gone Gus Burton. Again, that was down at Knickerbrook, and he rejoins, but has lost many places. Right, this is 4th, Adam versus Green. Johnny Adam ahead of Ben Green. It is the Beech Dean Aston just ahead of the Century BMW. This could be anybody's with now only 8.5 minutes to go. Time has flown by, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been incredible. An absolutely fitting opening to the British GT Esports Championship, the first SRO Esports Series here for the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. And this fight, just to be clear to everybody at home, 4th place is worth 12 points. 5th is worth 10. So Ben Green is fighting for that extra 2 points. We've seen Green is not afraid to be a little bit aggressive with his rivals out on track. So what does Johnny Adam do? Does he play safe, concede the place and lose 2 points? Or does he fight and risk losing a whole lot more should they get involved with each other out on circuit? What would you do, David? What's your call?
I think I'd keep trying to hang on to my position, but we'll wait and see what pans out. The other thing to bear in mind for 4th place is you don't carry weight into the next round. Top 3 in each class do carry ballast, so we've been making the point that these drivers have dropped a chunk of time. As you see the GT4 Moritz Lerner McLaren facing the wrong way at Shell, but by being out of the top 3 you have a lighter car, arguably a more competitive car going into the next race. Now of course in the real world you get pit stop penalties, extra time spent in the pits, but in our Esports British GT Championship it is ballast factored into the game. As Johnny Adam rattles over the curb, gets sideways, gets collected and gets tipped off the road. Around he goes. So Ben Green, having a checkered race, gets involved with Johnny Adam, who then gets hit up the back by Ryan Ratcliffe. So that gives Johnny yet more woe. It means that Sam Neary will go past him, and Johnny Adam eventually does get going with quite a lot of damage now on the rear of that Aston Martin, and that is not going to be an easy car for the remaining 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's a very big shame for Johnny Adam, and exactly what we were saying earlier on. Do you hold on and take a risk, or do you let it go and bank the points? Yes, banking points is a boring thing to do in the first round of the season, but eyes on the prize and all that good stuff. And sadly for Johnny Adam, that one did not quite work out. A small mistake, so easy to make on this circuit with big consequences now as we're looking back once again at the GT4 fighting, the striking I forgot what car it is. Audi, there we go. Striking. It's in there somewhere. We'll keep picking till we find a gear. In the striking Audi of Chris Hockey in 18th position, chasing down McIntyre, who's been in the thick of everything so far.
So let's have a look at this replay. That's Adam Morgan, who got involved with Moritz Lerner. We saw Lerner off the road. Wow, he got there quite spectacularly, and he got drilled by the Cayman as well. But Adam Morgan's GT3 Mercedes was involved in all of that. Moritz Lerner tries to get going again. Is there a gap in the traffic? He waits. Oh, and there's Adam Morgan. So having been tipped off the road by Adam, again, almost banger racing style, he aims for him, gives him a head on, and the two of them rejoin. Well, Adam's from touring car racing. He's used to hard knocks. That won't faze him. So 5 3/4 minutes to go, and it remains James Baldwin who leads here, 2.1 seconds ahead of Angus Fender. I suspect it is fair to say drivers might well be read the riot act about driving standards in general before the next round, but you can't argue with the fact that it has been a very lively race thus far.
Yeah, it's been incredibly entertaining, and I know we're not quite at the checkered flag yet, and this is an incredibly difficult question to ask in any circumstance. But David, who would you say has been your driver of the day from the competitors that we've seen out on circuit so far?
I'm tempted to go with Angus Fender because I know he's not leading at the moment. He probably led more laps than anybody else, actually. But I think taking the battle to sim racing gun driver James Baldwin and coming within a whisker of a win. Whoops, Sam Neary's got it wrong at Druids. I think he's very commendable of Angus Fender. So out of GT3 alone, he would be my star. Johnny Adam here is being reeled in now by Morgan Short, who will have been given huge amounts of guidance, I'm sure, by his father Martin, which means that Martin can't help himself. Mainstay of British GT for many, many seasons, having come out of Formula First and Metro Turbos and Rovers into GT racing. Martin Short and Morgan, who's been racing with the MG Car Club of late, is right there on the back of Johnny Adam as they plunge downhill with 4 minutes and change on the clock. Let's have another replay. Now, this was Johnny Adam being turfed off the road by Ben Green, and it all started with Johnny getting crossed up. Then there was the contact, and off he went. Now, your thoughts then, Paul, on a driver of the day. What do you reckon?
I think that's a really good shout. I think Angus Fender has thoroughly impressed me. As you say, he's up against drivers like James Baldwin that have got so much more experience in the virtual world, and a fabulous driver. And so far, Fender only 2.5 seconds away from that race lead, so still broadly in the fight for the championship lead. And in terms of our GT4s, Luca Burke, it's got to go to Luca Burke. Yeah. Very unassuming in the Porsche, not seen much of him on track, kept himself to himself. I'm a fan of a driver, Alan Prost-like, that can just go out there, get the job done, make no noise, and then suddenly pick a trophy up to everybody's surprise at the end. So great driving, but to be fair, I think the true winner of everything today has got to be the spectators, because we have had an absolute barnstormer, and there's still 3 minutes and 20 seconds left. I could do with another hour of this. Fabulous stuff.
Yes, can we have longer races, please, in season 2? Down they come. Of course, the real world British GT Championship has this mix of 2 1-hour races or a 2-hour race, and there's the 3 hours at Silverstone. As here, look, Johnny Adam has to go defensive to try to fend off Morgan Short as they come across the line. So the Aston Martin 5th, the 6th placed Morgan Short McLaren, so wanted to say Mosler there, comes out of Old Hall, nose to tail they plunge downhill, and the Aston just ahead, just under 3 minutes to go. This is going to be tough for Johnny, I think, because we know that his car is compromised after earlier contact, and the McLaren of Morgan Short is right there behind and set to make a move, I think. Yep, there he is, hidden under the rear wing. They dive down through the left-hand island bend, and there's a car on the grass up the road ahead, which could turn ugly. Yes, it does, and Johnny Adam had nowhere to go, and that eliminates Short as well. Major drama. Johnny Adam gets nailed by the Chevrolet. It's all kicked off going towards Shell Oil's corner, and I think the real casualty out of all of that was Morgan Short. He was badly delayed. Andrew Watson got involved, and Johnny Adam is off again with damage, and the car does not want to turn. Oh, crikey. Just about avoided yet more contact. That is not an easy car to cope with, and there are now incidents having to be reviewed post-race because there isn't enough time for the officials to have a look at everything with 2 minutes to go.
Is it safe to open my eyes yet? Because as soon as that started to happen, I closed them, and I'm going to open them again to see what the end result is. Wow, that was some incredible scenes, and it's a shame that's taken the sting out of the tail now, because Morgan Short was very much a man trying to fight past Johnny Adam. He has the position in the end, but would like to have seen that resolved out on the circuit. And Sam Neary, after being facing every direction possible during this race, is now at the inside into the final corner, makes the position stick. So Sam Neary incredibly moves up to 5th position, having been at the heart of pretty much anything that's borderline dramatic during this race, and now the Mercedes is 5th.
And he's had a drive-through as well, has he not? Right, last lap of the race then for James Baldwin. He's actually shaken off Angus Fender, and that incident we saw between the two of them a few laps ago is going to be reviewed post-race. So the officials are going to have a look to see if anybody was at fault, or whether, as we felt, it was a racing incident, but it will be looked at the very end of the race. Let's hope that doesn't affect the result because it's always better to have the winner, the person you see, take the checkered flag first. In the meantime, James Baldwin, look, he's about to lap Morgan Short, so he's lapped up to 6th place, and Angus Fender falling away. That gap has gone up to 6.4 seconds, so that does suggest the BMW picked up quite a bit of damage in that clash down at Hislops. So, on the last lap, there on the inset picture is James Baldwin coming over the hilltop. Paul, it has been quite a start to our 2021 British GT esports season, hasn't it?
Exactly as excited as we hoped it would be and more. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and we've still got plenty more to go, so brilliant driving from everybody.
So James Baldwin it is who leads the way as he climbs up the hill. He won here in the real world last year on his British GT debut, and he's going to win our first esports race as well. Angus Fender chasing home, somewhat distant, and then Jody Fannin, who was the first GT3 driver to stop and really benefited partly from that, partly from all the dramas around him, diving down towards Lodge Corner. Checkered flag is at the ready, and so it is going to be honours in the first British GT Esports Championship race to James Baldwin. Then the McLaren of Team Rocket RJN comes across the line to win at Oulton Park. James Baldwin is victorious. Angus Fender comes through for 2nd place. Great drive by Angus. We'll find out in a few moments, I hope, about any damage that was picked up which may have compromised the pace at the end. And you can see how far ahead of the opposition they were, because there at Hislops, only now to Knickerbrook, goes Jody Fannin in the 3rd placed Ferrari, the JMW Motorsport entry. And then for 4th place behind, Ben Green is hanging on to position for the moment, but the BMW is looking ever more battle-scarred, isn't it? The bonnet is up. If the air gets under that, it's going to start to prise open even more. So Ben Green has to temper his pace here to get to the end, but this is all heart-in-mouth stuff, Paul, isn't it?
It is. Ben Green struggling across the line as Jody Fannin crosses in 3rd position for Ferrari, so a great drive for Fannin, but look how much he's struggling. His Green can't get the car turned in. The GT4s are taking his way past as well. Ben Green, heart-in-mouth times for him.
So he's got half a lap or so to go. There is Luca Berg, who is on target to win GT4. And again, we'll try and have his thoughts post-race. 14th place overall in the Porsche 718 Cayman, the car operated by the Zansho Rocket SimSports squad. So Luca Berg wins in GT4. Really good drive by Luca. Over the line he goes. And here is the fight to be 2nd in GT4, where it is just Malinowski ahead of Naujoks. Nose to tail at the end as they were for the race. And Ben Green did survive for 4th place, just ahead of Sam Neary, as the drivers hit the escape button a little bit keen in 1 or 2 cases. And not only have we had a great way to end a Sunday with a fabulous GT race, but the stewards are in for a long night, I suspect, looking at all that evidence. So keep an eye on the British GT Esports social media, because there's going to be a lot more, I think, to shake out of this before we get a confirmed result. But wow, what a start to a championship. Well done, James Baldwin. Might have been out-qualified, but in the end he won by 7.7 seconds. Proof, if it were needed, that he is still as good in the sim world as the real world. And as the drivers then confirm the result, James Baldwin the winner from Angus Fender in 2nd, Jody Fannin 3rd, Ben Green 4th ahead of Sam Neary and Morgan Short, Andrew Watson 7th, then Bobby Trundley 8th after his woes, Johnny Adam 9th after his woes, Tom Canning 10th after his, you're ahead of me, Sandy Mitchell 11th ahead of his teammate Jack Lemmer, Gus Burton 13th, and then 14th was Luca Berg to win in GT4 ahead of Mashish Malinowski, and 3rd in GT4 was Niels Naujoks. But wow, drama from the very first corner to the very last, as drama aplenty went through our opening British GT Esports Championship race. So fingers crossed we'll get 1 or 2 of the drivers to hear the thoughts from post-race, but that was a race full of drama. And as we've been saying throughout, 1 or 2 of the drivers that were eliminated complaining about driving standards, but it certainly gave us plenty to talk about. And actually that battle between James Baldwin and Angus Fender was a very impressive one. It's a shame there was, Paul, that incident at Hislops, but both of them had driven that apart really well, haven't they?
Yeah, the fabulous driving from both, and I think it really bodes well for the championship in its entirety. I had a fear coming into this series that, as you rightly say, James Baldwin, former world's fastest gamer, an incredibly talented GT3 racer in the real world as well. There's kind of a bit of a danger, wasn't there, heading into the season, that Baldwin would walk away with this championship without really much of a challenge from the rest of the grid. But although he's taken the 25 points for race victory, it wasn't an easy victory by any stretch of the imagination. And Angus Fender came out of the blocks with plenty of speed, plenty of aggression. So I'm very excited to see how this shakes out at Snetterton and for the remainder of the season as well. It's not going to be a James Baldwin show. I think it's going to be quite a few drivers in there with a good chance. And one race down, that's a race distance experience under their belts as well. So everybody should be all the stronger for it, I would think.
And of course, we go to the next round with James Baldwin now having to carry the ballast as well. So the car will become 30 kilos heavier. So, you'd say it's not been a James Baldwin benefit thus far. Well, it might not be at Snetterton because with an even heavier McLaren, that's something else to factor in. So, it's going to be very interesting indeed.
And it's interesting with the ballast, David, as well, just to make it clear to the folks at home. This is not a ballast for anybody driving a McLaren. This is specific to the top three drivers. So 30 for P1, 15 kilograms for P2, and 10 for P3. So although the McLaren, in the hands of James Baldwin, has proven itself to be a fast car, it's still going to be a fast car for the other drivers as well. As I'm just hearing in my ear now that we've got our GT4 race winner, Luca Burke, to speak to. Luca, first and foremost, wow, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic result in GT4, our race winner. Does that feel good then? How does that feel to have an SRO Esports Championship race and 25 points in your pocket?
Oh man, great would be quite an understatement. It feels amazing. I was really, let's say, nervous coming into this because it's quite a step up when it comes to the kind of racing I usually do. So yeah, to be here not only on the podium but getting a win as well is just wow.
Now I know there's no such thing as an easy win, but that looked like an easy win. Talk us through it a little bit from your side, how the race panned out.
Well, I can tell you for sure it was not an easy win. It was actually looking a bit grim. Turn 1, lap 1 on race start, I had a bit of contact from behind, which sent me into one of the GT3 cars, which I'm sorry if they're listening. It wasn't intentional. And then, I just ran a bit of damage throughout the whole race and couldn't really keep up with Jack, which was rather frustrating because I knew the car had the pace. But as pit stops came along, I don't really know what happened. I just tried to stay out as long as possible, get out as quick as possible, and it just worked out. After that, just tried to keep good pace and bring it home.
Yep, seemed to work out spectacularly well for the race victory. Now, in the Porsche, the car is going to be carrying 30 kilograms additional weight for the next race at Snetterton. Have you got any expectation of still being able to run at the front of the field? How do you think that's going to affect your performance and the team's performance?
It's going to be probably, I'd imagine, very difficult to keep up with the level of competition that's here. However, I can't say I'm not really used to ballast because I run even more than that in some other series, so I have experience, I'm glad to say.
Fantastic. And talking of experience, one last quick question from me. Obviously this is a very high profile championship. It's an official SRO series. It's the British GT Championship official series. What kind of practice and running and testing and development have you done to get yourself into the position where you can be the first GT4 race winner?
That's a very detailed question. However, I'll keep it simple. I can't really spoil too much. It's just really as much running as possible. I tried to just, whenever I had time, I tried to do a stint or see what each setting does. Just try to really understand what the car does over the hour. So it was just trying to run stint after stint, see what works best.
Fantastic. Well, whatever magic ingredients you're using, continue to use them, Luca, because that was a dominant performance in the end for the Zansho Rocket Sim Sport car. Congratulations on being the very first winner of the British GT Esport GT4 category here at Oulton Park. Fabulous drive.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Brilliant. Luca Burke, race winner in GT4 for Zansho Sim Sport. Fabulous. And David, I believe James Baldwin will be the next person up that we're going to speak to very, very shortly. But a great drive, wasn't it, from Luca in GT4?
It was indeed, and it's interesting that he makes the point about having contact early on and damage. Now, understand as well that there might be another change to the results here, because we've already had a post-race penalty go the way of Sandy Mitchell, and a 30-second penalty in lieu of a drive-through has been given to James Baldwin. Ooh. So contact, so it's Angus Fender's win. I'll try and work out where 30 seconds puts James. I think he'll still be ahead of Jody Fannin, actually. He only reverses the top two. And also, number 25 has had a penalty applied. That's Adam Morgan for an incident involving Moritz Lerner. We saw that, didn't we, at Shell, the Mercedes against the McLaren, and then if you remember, Lerner did him head on as he rejoined. So Adam Morgan's got a 30-second penalty post-race, but James Baldwin has been given a 30-second post-race penalty. So he loses his win, he drops to second. That means that Angus Fender is the race winner. Now, whether he's disconnected or whether we can grab him and put him into the chat, we will try and find in a moment. So talk amongst yourselves for a moment. But we were discussing who was driver of the day, and Angus Fender a winner arguably by default, but that perhaps strengthens his case to be driver of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just drama continuing even after the checkered flag has been waved, and that's going to have a big impact. So as you say, Baldwin 30 seconds, he was 50 seconds ahead, 51 seconds ahead of third place Jody Fannin in the Ferrari. So it's only reversing the top two, but that's a big impact for the championship as well, because 25 points plays 18 for second, and big change.
Indeed. So, having crossed the line second, I can say well done to our race winner, Angus Fender, because, Angus, if you didn't know, James has been given a 30-second penalty in lieu of a drive-through for that incident approaching his lops. So, first of all, well done, British GT Esports race winner. What a race.
Thanks. I mean, I was downstairs having a drink and I got told and I had to sprint back up here and pick up my headset again. So, I'm a little bit out of breath now, but all worth it, I'm sure.
Was it a tough race? I mean, you had a really good battle early on, but it was quite a move to get the lead at the first corner, first of all. I mean, that was a good fight you had with James in the first part of the race.
Yeah, the first half was fantastic. I mean, the M6 was absolutely driving beautifully. Then after the pit stops, I was unlucky to pick up a slow puncture on the left rear, so that kind of slowed my pace a little bit. Backed me into the pack, and it kind of ruined my rhythm as well. But what happened with James, and it was still really close either way and some good battling, but obviously I'm happier to come out the winner.
Your take on that incident, was it just an accident, or was he being a bit aggressive?
It's really hard to say. It's really close. I've watched it back in slow motion since the race happened, and it's tight. I slowed it down to 0.25 speed, and it looks like there's a little chink to the left, but I don't think it was anything majorly malicious, so I wouldn't say he was trying to take me off. I just think he misjudged the width of his car.
Okay, excellent. Now, that clash, I mean, you mentioned you already got the slow puncture. Did that incident do yet more damage to the car?
Yeah, it did some more damage to the left and right side of my car. Obviously, when I rejoined, James ended up going into the back of me, so I was trying to hang on for dear life for the rest of the race. The car was kind of sliding everywhere, but yeah, it is what it is, and we'll move on to the next one and try and continue the form.
Excellent stuff. Now, how much time have you spent preparing for this? Have you been in the sim regularly, or have you been relying on real-world expertise in anticipation of this race?
I've done some. I could have done more if I'd have chosen to, but I kind of just play this for fun most of the time. I'm not in an esports team. I don't do any esports racing.
Right.
So this is my first proper competitive race since the end of SRO Esports last year at Kyalami, and it's nice to have some fantastic competition and a lot of cars out on track, all of them quality drivers. But it's just great fun at the end of the day, isn't it? And it keeps you sharp, and it's just a good way to cope with lockdown.
Very true. Angus, well done. British GT Esports Championship race winner at Oulton Park. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
So Angus Fender then is our race winner, and you've heard one take on the incident. Well, it's only fair that we hear the other side of the story. James Baldwin joins us, having crossed the line first. As you've just been hearing, he cops the penalty, falls to second place. James, commiserations. Your take on that incident with Angus?
I didn't actually know about that, to be fair, but if that's the case, I don't really know why that happened. I thought it was fair racing, but great first race of the British GT Esports Championship. Glad to be a part of it. But yeah, that's a bit of a shame, really. I didn't know what I did wrong. Sorry,
apologies. I thought somebody would have told you that. Yes, it's come up on our post-race penalties page, a 30-second penalty in lieu of a drive-through for an incident with Angus. So it only loses you one place because you were both so far ahead of the third-place car, but I'm afraid it cost you the win. So the race officials have had a look at it and come down on that side. But the fight you had with Angus was epic, and it was a really good battle right from the start of the race, wasn't it? That move around the outside at Old Hall was something.
Yeah, great race. Obviously had some pretty sketchy moments, a bit of contact here and there, but Robin's race, especially around Oulton Park where it's so tight, it's very hard to avoid contact. But I love the GT4 element. I thought it was really, really good. The best race, the most enjoyable race I've had on ACC, or to be honest, any sim. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. And looking forward to the remaining rounds. But yeah, that's a bit of a downer, but oh well, we move.
That's true. 4 more races to go. You can win all those 4 and make amends. Do you come into this feeling as though you're not so much a marked man, but you're almost having to deliver, given your world's fastest gamer, given your sim racing background, or are you feeling accepted as a real world racer as well these days?
I think I'd always have that sim tag. It is my job, so you're right. I'm a marked man, but I've had that title for over a year, so I like to think I'm getting used to it. Of course, it's going to be pressure, but the McLaren, it wasn't the best car around this track, so to be fighting for the lead was pretty good. So to see the next few races, hopefully it can be a bit more strong. And yeah, it was a good race though. Really enjoyed it.
Well, James, well done for second. Commiserations that it wasn't the win you thought it was, but thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
So James Baldwin then second, and you've heard from our race winner Angus Fender. There you go. Nothing like quite being the bearer of bad news. Hey ho, that's me off his Christmas card list. Although I suspect the race officials aren't on that list either after that. But as James said, he didn't quite know what he did wrong. But of course, had it been in the race, he could have copped a drive-through penalty and served that. But retrospectively, irrespective of the length of the pit lane, it's 30 seconds. So the rule is the rule is the rule. But I've noticed from what he's just posted on the chat that he's not impressed by that decision. However, Angus Fender is our race winner, James Baldwin second, and Jodie Fannin third. How about that, Paul? Drama from the very first corner to even in the interview channel after the race.
It's the gift that keeps on giving, is this opening race of the season. But I must say, mark of a true professional from James Baldwin, the way he took the news live on air from yourself was really impressive. That it's sort of, oh, that's disappointing. Oh, well, we move on and we fight and we live to fight another day. And really impressive, actually, to see how James responded to that one. Because yes, this is virtual racing. It's not the real championship. It's not what you're being paid to do for a living. Your career's not going to rise or fall based on the results today. But it's still important for a driver. They still put work and time and effort into it. They still want the bragging rights amongst their peers of being the race winner. So credit where credit's due. James Baldwin there. Well behaved.
Yeah, I think James conducted himself very, very well there, and he and Angus Fender marked themselves out as 2 real star drivers, both in what they were saying post-race and the driving on the track. So the good news is we only have to wait a week before round 2 of the championship, Snetterton, which will be same time next Sunday evening. But what a start to a championship season. That has been an epic race, Paul, has it not?
It has indeed. Fabulous race. From a personal point of view, it's been wonderful to share a commentary box with yourself as well, David. And, of course, most importantly for everybody at home, anybody who's still with us, you can qualify yourself. So the top 10 finishers in GT4 get an automatic pass into round 2 on the 28th of March at Snetterton. But there are still 10 GT4 places up for grabs for anybody out there in the community. So join up the hot lap competition within Assetto Corsa Competizione. Go out and try and set the fastest time you possibly can, and the fastest 10 drivers for the manufacturer entries will be invited to take part in the race next week at the Snetterton 300 circuit in the GT4 class. So great opportunity to be involved. Of course, the champion at the end of the season wins a €2,000 plus prize of some Fanatec goodies too, and you get to share the track with some of these great drivers and be commentated over by Mr. David Addison himself. So what more could you possibly ask for?
Yeah, every silver lining has a cloud or something. Isn't it? 3 out of 4 wasn't bad. You were selling it so well, Paul. But if you want to take part in it, have a go at the Hot Laps Qualifier, because GT4 actually has given us some great racing as well. I mean, we've inevitably focused on what's been happening in GT3, and there's been all that high drama. But GT4, mega competitive, and almost 2 races within that. What we had before the pit stops, Jack McIntyre leading, and what we had afterwards. So Snetterton 300, a very different circuit for our second round of the championship. Can't wait.
Yep, fantastic stuff. And thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody who's been responsible for organising this wonderful race, the first race of the British GT Esports Championship. Thank you to all our drivers for providing incredible action from beginning to end, to even after it had closed. And thank you for everybody for tuning in. From myself, Paul Jeffrey, from the wonderful Mr. David Addison, and from all of us here at the British GT Esports Championship, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the 28th of March, same time, same place, for round 2 at Snetterton. Take care. Bye-bye.